Every single time I log on to my comment section, I get a lot of people asking me about the Romanian elections. They're absolutely horrified about what happened, right?
Why?
And I have a fellow content creator here who follows Romanian politics, and hopefully you can enlighten our foreign subscribers about the political situation that led to the cancellations of the elections.
Annulment, to be more precise. Yeah, it's not really that horrifying. I mean, most of my fellow political operatives are terrified by it. I'm not. I'm actually very happy with the situation because it makes the current establishment look terrifying. It makes them look bad, and we are getting closer to flattening the entirety of the current establishment, which is precisely what we've been wanting for the last 7-8 years.
The punishment for the pandemic.
Not just for the pandemic, for most of their governance. I mean, we have to remember that the Social Democrats and the National Liberals have been in power almost uninterruptedly since 1991, right? I mean, there's 3 cabinets where they weren't in power. 1990, because they didn't exist yet. It was called FSN and FDSN. 1999 with the technocratic current governor of the National Bank government, and 2016 with Călin Georgescu's friends in the cabinet.
Yeah, so translation for my viewers, basically what he is saying is that the same people have been in politics for quite a few decades now.
Yeah.
And a lot of Romanians are upset.
Yeah.
And when Romanians are upset, they don't just nullify their vote or choose to stay home. They want to put the clown car inside the political establishment.
Yeah, it happened before. I mean, it happened in 2000. It was pretty much the same thing. Corneliu Vadim Tudor, a national communist, effectively, was...
National communist.
Yes, I mean, that was basically the guy's ideology, right? I mean, you know, he promised in the election campaign to put Hungarians on the stadium and shoot them.
Was that a thing?
Yes. And then after he qualified in the second round against all odds, the press finally figured out that the guy exists. I mean, they intentionally ignored his entire campaign. But then, you know, they started asking people, well, did you vote for Vadim? Yes. Why? Well, I voted for him because he's crazy and you guys deserve it.
Yeah,
right?
like literally punishing the political elites by voting AOCs,
yeah.
by voting squad members. But they're not like really necessarily on the left. It can be like a right wing.
Yeah, it can be fascist. It can be anything.
Yeah, just as long as they're insane.
Yes.
You vote for them. Yeah, like
the more insane, the better. I mean, you've seen this in the US as well. I mean, in AOC's district was carried by Donald Trump this time around, right? So there were a lot of people, in fact, the majority of AOC's district voted for her and for Trump, right?
For Americans to understand, vote for, like imagine if you're voting for Alex Jones and people are like, but he's a conspiracy theorist. And you're like, yes, yes.
That's precisely why we're going to do it, right? And
but he said this offensive, yes, like absolutely.
Before the Constitutional Court came out with the annulment decision, that was one of the things, and then the state television came out and said, oh, this guy said that the feminists are crazy and they're a bunch of, they're cancerous ideology for society. And I'm like, guys, do you want Călin Georgescu to be the next president? I mean, you know,
that's presidential talking point.
Yes, I mean, in Romania, saying that feminists are crazy is a very mainstream position. I mean, the Social Democrats say the feminists are crazy. The National Liberals say the feminists are crazy.
The feminists say that the feminists
say the feminists are crazy. I mean, and some of the feminists from 10 years ago are also now on the far right. I mean, Ioana Stăniloiu was shilling for the alliance.
Shoshaka
was a feminist.
She's now in the European Union with with all sorts of religious relics and trying to cast away the demons.
I'm still waiting for Shoshaka to deliver on her promise. She said she would come with an entire group of Orthodox priests to cast away the demons.
From the European Union,
yes, do a Sveshtani on the European Parliament. I'm looking forward for her to deliver on
for
that.
those of you
she
who
hasn't
don't know,
yet.
she's an EU EMP. Like she's a member of the European Union from
European Parliament.
Yeah, from Romania. Yeah. And she's a very pious lady that used to be a feminist.
Yeah, well, she's not really pious. I mean, pious is not a word that I would use to describe Ioana Șoșoacă. But yeah, she's a lawyer and she used to work for feminist causes until she didn't. So there's that. So anyway, long story short, the election ran somewhat in this direction. And the establishment did expect that at least one nominally pro-change candidate will be in the final. But the establishment was thinking that it would either be the current vice president of the European Conservatives and Reformists group, George Simion, or the Westoid left candidate, Elena Lasconi.
The progressive candidate,
The
from
Westoid
corporate.
left, essentially, right? And they
The
expected,
woke.
they expected to be one of these two, and the other one to be the current Prime Minister, Marcel Ciolacu. And therefore, the Social Democrats engaged in a conspiracy and said, okay, let's get some of our people, because they would put their stake on at least 4 million votes, and said, okay, let's donate some of our votes to the one most likely to be in the final, and let's put the guy from the ECR, because he would be easier to beat.
Translation for the Americans. Imagine if the Democrats were to invest a lot of resources in the Republican primary so that Donald Trump manages to win. So that when he goes against Hillary Clinton, then
Yeah.
it's going to be a sure way, because like no one is going to vote for Trump because he's crazy.
Yeah.
They did literally that in our country.
Well, this happened in the U.S. as well. I mean, there were Democrat funds who funded
it was
his
basically they're basically saying, all right, we can rig the primary, like get a lot of people to register as Republicans that are Democrats, and they will favor the craziest candidate, the one that is going to have absolutely no chance to beat ours.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that worked. So like the other side did the same for there, and then you end up with two crazy candidates.
Yes, and then the Social Democrats noticed in the last week of the election campaign that, hold on a second, there's another surge in popularity for an even crazier candidate, Călin Georgescu, right? Călin Georgescu had been polling at around 6 to 7% for the whole year of 2024. And then suddenly, around 2 weeks or a week and a half before the first round, he was surging in popularity. And the Social Democrats were like, okay, I guess we're going to have to face this crazy. So they switched the strategy mid-game and said, okay, we're going to donate some votes to this guy, and our candidate, Marcel Ciolacu, the incumbent prime minister, will face this guy in the second round. But in doing so, they donated a bit too many votes, and as a result, the incumbent prime minister finished third, right beneath the progressive candidate. And that is because the National Liberals were doing the same thing. They were supporting Călin Georgescu's campaign. They were paying for his social media campaign, that amazing social media campaign that they said it was Russian.
Yeah.
Well, he was a state actor in the end, except the actor was Romanian.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know about Călin Georgescu, a lot of people think he's a nationalist, but like
No.
if you follow the guy, he is like literally anything you want him to be. You put him in a progressive circle, he will talk about sustainability.
Sustainable development has been his 30-year-long grift.
He will
right?
talk about like leftist causes. If you put him next to some religious people, he will talk about God bless and the importance of rooting degeneracy out of society. You put him in a right-wing circle, he will start talking about those step on snake. Like, he is the type of person that will just talk about anything that makes him popular, right? Like, he will accommodate himself to the circle in which he is.
Yeah, the guy perfected the art of political grift,
Yeah.
effectively, right? And that's why I wasn't concerned necessarily. I'm like, okay, we had a president who was a vulgar sailor. We had the president who was a commie war criminal. We had the president who was an intellectual, Emil Constantinescu. We had the president who's been asleep, the current incumbent one. So why not have a grifter president? So it wouldn't be that bad, right? I didn't vote for him. I wasn't particularly excited, but I also wasn't afraid of a Georgescu president.
Exactly. The choice was between a grifter and a woke person.
Yeah, right.
So like a lot of us were placed in a difficult situation. Like, again, imagine if I on my channel, like I have my talking points and then I go with Vosh and I talk like a progressive, and then I go with Destiny and I talk like a neoliberal, and then I go on some right-wing channel and I'm a Christian, and then I go on an atheist. Like what type of person would you say I am in that situation, right? Like, what are my convictions? Well, that's kind of like Georgescu, and you have to vote either for him or you gotta vote for the woke person.
Yeah, pretty much. And the thing with Elena Lasconi is not that she was necessarily woke, but almost everyone in her staff was, right? Because
Parent 1, Parent 2.
Yes.
Like she had someone in the staff, or her, she said it, that if you disagree with the concept of Parent 1, Parent 2, you're a fascist.
Yeah, she said it, yes.
And I'm like, lady, your party is like number 6 or 7, and you're telling like
the absolute majority of
the absolute majority, because like more than 90% of the people in Romania believe that Parent 1 and Parent 2 is
Crazy.
a little bit too extreme, right? And you're telling them that 90% of people are fascists. Well, Georgescu didn't call me a fascist, right? Like, at least he's grifting, but he never called me a fascist.
Right, he never insulted me. So,
He never insulted me,
So there's that. Well, he insulted my intelligence, but he never insulted me. Right. In any event, so no, it was a tough choice. But the thing is that as it became clear that the election campaign had been manipulated, On November the 28th, the current regime meets itself. That is to say, the Supreme Council of the National Defense, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Homeland Security, right? Like,
No, there is no equivalent in the US for that. It's basically the real life incarnation of the regime. This council contains the president, the prime minister, the minister of defense, the heads of all of the three-letter agencies, the minister of internal affairs. So basically, the regime.
so basically, the FBI, the CIA, Homeland, like the directors of
Yeah,
these,
think
right?
of the Directorate of National Intelligence plus president plus all
The
of
most
the.
glowing thing in the
Yes, right. And so basically, the regime holds this glowy meeting, and they talk about how the election went, the first round on November the 24th. So the council takes place in the November 28th, and the president can declassify the content of those meetings whenever he damn
Yeah.
pleases. And on December the 4th, the president decides to declassify those because the Constitutional Court, without any other input, they were said, oh, well, the first round, although there may have been manipulations, the first round was not fraudulent. The votes were real people voted, not bots or whatever.
TikTok, yeah.
Yeah, so therefore you can hold the second round as planned. And then the president declassifies this, and then the Constitutional Court commits something that will probably end in a fundamental reform of the Constitutional Court by the end of this decade. The Constitutional Court decided to act on its own initiative, which they're not allowed to. And they said, oh, well, actually, now in the light
Yeah.
of the new evidence, we're revising the decision we
We're
made.
remaking the.
Yeah, no, we revised the decision that we made 3 days ago. 3 days ago, we said all of the election was kosher. But now, because of this new declassification, we have new evidence and say, okay, actually, it wasn't kosher. Therefore, back to square one. The whole
To
process.
be fair, like the Constitutional Court, the SCOTUS, they were really good during the pandemic. Like during
Yeah.
the pandemic, the
Yeah.
government had a lot of measures, including fines and punishments for people that didn't stay indoors. And then SCOTUS said, no, all of them are unconstitutional.
Yeah.
The government should go fuck itself.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
but still, at that time, the Constitutional Court was observing the Constitution. This time around, there is a very serious debate
What
that
do you
they
think
didn't.
happened, though? Like, what do you think happened behind the scenes that led to this?
Oh, it's
decision?
simple. The regime didn't like neither the prospective winner or the final
No, I get
itself.
that, but like the court, the regime can order the court to.
In practice, yes, of course.
So why didn't
'Cause
they do
they're-
it during the pandemic?
Because at that time the regime was much weaker.
Oh, so like now the regime was stronger.
No, there wasn't full consensus. You have to remember there were regime people who agreed with us on the pandemic. There wasn't full consensus.
Oh,
And-
so basically, like, yeah, because a lot of Americans, they view like the government as this unified force,
Yeah, no, it's
right?
really
Like,
not. It's fully factionalist.
It's factionalist, and
it's true in the US.
It's basically mutual interests that drive people to a certain.
Absolutely,
And so, like in this time, the stars aligned so that there was consensus between everyone that Georgescu and Lasconi shouldn't go forward.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, pretty much. This is true in most countries. That's one issue. This time they viewed it as a national security issue. And just like in the US, whenever you say national security, all else becomes secondary. Whereas with the pandemic, at the end of the day, most people are like, okay, but it's still just a cough, right? Okay, maybe it's a very dangerous cough, but it's still just a cough.
We're not going to crash our economy.
Yeah,
because,
we're not going, and the country will still be here even if the cough sweeps 100 times, we'll still be here, and as evidence, we're still here. So obviously they were correct. Whereas they believed, some of them sincerely so, some of the members of the regime sincerely so, they believe that if the grifter becomes president, he will ruin the diplomatic relations of the country, or he'll attempt.
Do you think he would though? Like he's a grifter. Can't he grift on besides the EU or?
Yeah, well, historically, he's been quite unlucky with EU funds. He's been much more successful with UN funds.
No, but like I'm saying, like if you're in his position, you probably wouldn't rock the boat too much. You'd probably just do what you can so you can keep grifting and getting that paycheck and the influence and.
I'm not going to do psychoanalysis on Călin Georgescu. I don't know. I don't care.
They could have impeached him though. Like that was what I expected,
Yes,
right?
yes, there was an option to impeach him. I mean, the non-Georgescu factions had at least 2/3 of the parliament, so they could.
Yeah, that's exactly.
They could have impeached him. There was also the option that usually these kinds of populist waves, because again they happened in the past in Romania and they will happen again. They usually last around 6 to 8 months, maybe a year, right? So maybe he would have succeeded in triggering a snap election. Maybe, maybe not. But if the parliament hold its way for enough time, it was very much possible to turn the same populist wave against him.
Yeah.
Right? There were multiple options that were within the confines of the constitution.
To explain to the American subscribers, the reason that Romanians don't go out and protest is because the purpose is to vote out of spite. Like, spite is the driving motivator of a lot of Romanians.
Fuck the regime is the dominant ideology now.
And so the idea is to send the clown car and humiliate the people in power. Them canceling elections achieves exactly that.
Yeah.
And there's going to be new elections, so there will be another clown car.
Yeah, I mean, even Politico.eu finally noticed that the whole annulment and all of the revelations about this guy and whatever increased his popularity, not decreased. And I'm like, well, duh, obviously. So yeah, and it's also another very important aspect. The president in Romania is not like the president in Argentina or in the US or in Brazil, right? We're not a presidential republic. The lack of a president, I mean, the country can function really well without a president at all.
Do you know, like, a lot of USR people, like, they don't understand the spite at all. And I notice that Americans, they also don't get the spite.
Well,
it's like,
USR should understand. I mean, that's how they got into politics.
Yeah, but, like, most of their supporters, the one that I talk with, I don't understand. It's like, the guy is crazy. Why are you voting for him? And I'm like, I'm voting for him.
Precisely because he's crazy.
Because he is crazy, right? and if he isn't there, then I will find the next guy that's crazy.
Yeah, at this point, the extremist candidate, as the media dubbed him, is an institution in and of itself. The institution of the extremist candidate, right? So we're not voting for Călin Georgescu, we're voting for the extremist candidate. Oh, the regime said he can't run. Okay, who's the next extremist candidate?
Yeah, it's really like the shitpost vote.
Yes, pretty much.
It's like when you get your shitpost and you get the politician. Right. So hopefully the subscribers...
We had something like that last time around as well. Cumpănașul, right?
Cumpănașul, yeah.
I mean, he got 3%. You know, he was too ahead of his time. He wasn't. The idea of shitpost vote had not come. Its time had not come. But you know, it happened in the past. It will happen again. And well,
it's kind of like in America, Marjorie Taylor Greene, except that she's actually competent.
Yeah, but
right?
she's also competent. Yeah,
she's also competent. But like, imagine a Marjorie Taylor Greene that's incompetent, and you vote them specifically because it's incompetent. So like, there is an actual theory of this called legislation stability. Like, if the government is inefficient and incapable of producing new legislation,
that's a good thing.
That's a good thing because the country stabilizes. Like, investors can predict what's going to happen 3 years from now. People can predict their future a lot easier than when you have,
or at least can plan it. Maybe
yeah, they can plan it rather than when you get surprises like new legislations that restrict your rights, new legislation that increase your taxes. If, as you mentioned, right, like the government works on factions. The moment you understand that, then you're like, okay, well, what if we make it so that no faction managed to get the upper hand and they're fighting with each other like it's Game of Thrones? They leave us alone. Meanwhile, when the factions align, well, they can cancel elections.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way it goes. So yeah, it will fix itself eventually. I'm hoping that the next round of elections gets cancelled as well. I really do. And the reason is very simple. I mean, who's going to vote for the National Liberals in 2028?
I don't
I'm
think
just saying.
Yeah, I don't think
saying.
they will cancel them again.
I hope they do.
Do you know why it's funny? It's because the parties are livid about this because they have to keep spending money on the campaigns. Like, they got to raise more money, you know, convince people. Because, like, at some point, the people that keep running, they may get tired of it. You know, it's not easy to go from place to place and campaign. And
again, I hope that the May elections get cancelled as well. Or maybe they deliver a final between, I don't know, George Simeon and Călin Georgescu. I mean, why not? Let's just do that.
Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.